it all started with me. The first time that I ever saw, I mean, I'm not saying that I started that.
Dan started Glitch. Guys.
I started Glitch. No, this whole thing you're talking about where you take something and you, you're essentially saying that you reconstruct it, right?
Yeah,
or
pretty much.
Deconstruct it. One of the two.
D and Re.
Yeah, D and Re.
Diarrhea, they call it.
Diarrhea. Citizens of Earth, welcome to the Accelerativ Thrust podcast. I am Dan.
And I'm Erik.
And all right, so have you heard about the new AI app called Udio, where it's a
Udio.
They literally you literally can create songs. Like, it allows you to create songs like up to 1,200 of them using text prompts.
Oh, finally.
Mm-hmm. Good. We've been totally just waiting for this.
I'm so sick of trying to write songs.
I know. And
it's been like the bane of my existence.
This literally did make me think, though, just for fun, I would not mind actually making an AI album just to see what I can come up with, not using my brain in any way whatsoever. Not thinking
let's get that barrier out of the way right now.
Yeah. Using thinking is something that is it gets in the way of too many things, you know?
Oh, I agree with that.
So it's like not thinking, that's the first step. And so these people that created Udio, they were onto something. But anyway, it's interesting to actually listen to some of the AI songs that have actually been out. I don't know if you've had a chance.
No.
It's really interesting. There's you can literally just sort of say a lyric that's in your mind and then just let the AI do the work. And then, and you could say I love you so much. And then you could say in the style of dubstep glitch or something. And it'll do something like that.
Okay. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Let's do it. You know what? Let's feed in this podcast and see what AI kicks out for the rest of this episode.
Well, I was actually going to say that, though. I wonder when they're going to create AI generated podcasts.
Right now. Here we go. Switching over right now.
We're going to be the pioneers of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds good.
Synthesizers, Fugazi, Ninja Turtles,
food, Ween, all kinds of things. And that'll be our first podcast.
Yeah.
AI
it
podcast.
Actually is just like the first episode of this podcast.
Oh, yeah. They would literally just be, hosted by guys named Dan and Erik.
Yeah. AI needs 3 hours to get its point across.
A couple of things that I want to actually I do actually seriously want to talk about.
Snap.
I mean, I also seriously wanted to talk about the AI thing, but
this is already the AI part of the show.
That's right.
This is all generated. So
if anyone wants to know, this actually isn't Dan and Erik. Should we redo the intro to let them know that we're not Dan and Erik anymore?
But
it's up to you,
man. Confusing. All right. So we're not real. Right now.
Yep.
But we're gonna redo the intro
to let them know that
we're not real.
Yeah. Oh, I guess we already did let them know, didn't we? Yeah. They know enough.
Yeah. They know more than they need to know.
Yeah. They know enough. Couple interesting pieces of news that caught my eye. First of all, did you hear that the Smashing Pumpkins have a new guitarist? They did some open tryouts. And they picked this, the new guitarist is named Kiki Wong. And I just thought that was kind of cool. That was kind of interesting, Smashing Pumpkins. And she said that she never thought that 15-year-old me would be playing guitar in my bedroom, or that was playing guitar in my bedroom, would join the Smashing Pumpkins. So
nice.
I thought that was kind of cool. I always like stories like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where I like, because Billy Corgan could probably pick any guitar player that's already like made it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool. That he picked a fan.
Yeah. I'm looking at some pictures. Looks like she's a shredder.
Yeah.
Like all of her guitars are like Jackson's, Floyd Roses and stuff. That's cool.
That is really cool.
I love shredding.
Me too. And I'm really interested in like, even though I'm not necessarily too thrilled with a lot of the new Smashing Pumpkins material, I'm interested in hearing what she'll bring to the table,
Yeah.
So
some new energy.
Yeah, new energy. I think
Shredder G. No, shred it. I can't get it.
Shredder G. Shredology.
She's gonna bring some shredology to the mix.
Some shredology, man. And of course, you got me thinking of Shredder now from the Ninja Turtles.
Are you talking about the Ninja Turtles?
Of course, I'm talking about the Ninja Turtles.
Okay, so that's the first thing, and then so the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is going to be extremely absurd, but trust me, there's a bigger point here because I actually have a question for you, Erik.
Oh,
so Motley Crue just released their new video.
Okay.
And without Mick Mars. I don't know if you knew that Mick Mars is no longer in the band.
Yeah, they've been having some trouble.
Yes.
Mick and Motley.
So John 5 is the guitar player now.
Yeah.
The name of the new song, if I'm not mistaken,
I'll look it up. Mick Mars Sucks.
Oh man,
they're so mad at him. They're so mad.
That's really good.
I'm on his side though. I love Mick Mars. That dude is Mick Mars, amazing.
A shredder, man. Like you want to talk about shredders? There you go.
Very melodic and technically awesome. I like Mick Mars. I think he's the only one of the group that I would still say, oh, he seems like a cool guy.
Yeah. You mean you wouldn't say that about Tommy Lee?
No, I wouldn't say it about any. Oh my God. I spend a lot of time on Catatonic Youth watching Neil try to sing now. It's really, really good stuff.
Yeah, it is.
And then I get sad and I feel bad and then I turn it off, but then I always come back. And
it's one of those things you really can't help.
Yeah. Vince Neil is a car crash.
He is, absolutely. So the name of the song and video is Dogs of War. Okay. And the video is actually really cool. I'm going to say that. Visually, it's actually a pretty cool video. Yeah. Song I'm not too crazy about. But this, I don't know if we've ever really just like directly talked about this. And it just got me kind of thinking. The Rolling Stones came out with like their, I don't know, 760th album last year or something.
Okay. Yeah. And
you got a lot of bands. Kiss just sold their band. I don't know if you heard about that.
No, that sounds
dude.
Cool.
Yeah,
What's
no.
that about?
So they sold their band for so many millions of dollars, basically. Okay. Like, and from what I understand, that means they no longer have to tour. So they sold their catalog for an estimated $300 million. That pretty much means, from what I understand, that when they do tour, it's going to be like all holograms, or at least that's maybe the theory behind it. Okay. And so there's going to be like endless farewell tours if that's really true. So you got that going on.
Yeah.
And so there's a problem in rock music. The problem seems to be that the opposite of rap music. Rap music is considered like totally 100% a young man's game. In fact, it's like you're automatically considered like out of touch.
You're out of touch.
And quote unquote an old head. You always hear those types of words like when associated with rap. If you say that nothing in this new generation of rap is good, or if you say you don't like a popular rap artist today, then a lot of times they're just like, well, you're out of touch. Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg were yesterday. You know what I mean? They're old. They're old now. Things like that.
Sure.
Rock seems to be the exact opposite. If you look at like the headlining slots of like any rock festival in the past, like, I don't know, 15, 20 years, it always seems to be artists, like with maybe a few exceptions, but it always seems to be artists that have made their mark like 20 years ago, sometimes even 30, 40, 50 years ago. I mean, you still have like Guns N' Roses headlining like big festivals, like big rock festivals. And so there's this lack of respect for new artists in rock music. The question that I bring up, because I think this is a really hard one to answer, even though I think it's pretty obvious where I'm heading, but I do think this is actually a difficult one to answer. Is there a point in time where a band should just hang it up? Is that really like, I mean, because you hear that a lot of times when people talk about like new album, oh, they should have just, hung it up like years ago. Like a lot of the new Iron Maiden stuff, you got two camps. You got the people that still love the fact that they're putting out music. And then you got, a bunch of them that are like, well, they peaked in the 80s and 90s, or whatever.
Yeah.
They peaked with Brave New World or whatever. And, you hear that about Aerosmith. I remember when the Rolling Stones came out with a new record last year, a lot of people were saying that, stuff like that. What is your stance on that, Erik?
Well, let me first start with saying that yesterday I had to stop at a gas station to use the restroom. And for whatever reason, the speaker in the bathroom was freaking cranked, like amazingly loud. And so they played the Janie's Got a Gun, Aerosmith.
Yeah.
And I've never listened to the intro of that song like at blaring volumes before. It's amazing, actually. The first up until the chorus of that song is really, really cool. Anyway, I just wanted to share a bathroom story.
I've always thought
this is AI. Here's the thing about what you're asking me, and this doesn't have to do with the bathroom anymore, but it does have to do with Aerosmith. I would say Aerosmith had their heyday in the late 70s, right? And then they put out Trash for a while and were all messed up.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
At that point, as a fan, I probably would have been like, they might as well hang it up. They're done. And then they came back in the 90s, all thanks to Run DMC. But some of those songs, I hate to admit it, but they're kind of good. Like, I like Crying. I mean, I like the act of crying, but I also like the song Crying. But so like that, I don't know. I think most artists probably have more in them that deserves to be explored.
Right.
With that being said, I don't know. Like if you change too much, then I'm kind of like, well, why not just have this be a different band?
Yeah.
Like get a new name and say, all the members of, I don't know, the Scorpions are now this band. Like, and we sound totally different. Like that would be better than whatever the Scorpions did through the 90s. I don't know. It's a tough one. And the thing is too, there's like an inherent ageist element to this, like you were talking about with hip hop. It's hard for older artists that have been around for a long time to release anything that's going to be considered groundbreaking or interesting or whatever to anyone other than their most diehard fans. So that's another thing. It's really hard. Like I think a artist would have to just come out of left field with something so completely different and insane and forward thinking that people take notice, but that doesn't happen all that often. It does happen, but not that often. So I don't know. I know I'm not answering your question at all, but I guess what I would say is, I don't know. If you're just going to keep putting out the same thing that you did before or worse, then probably hang it up. But if you're going to try some new things, maybe just explore it as a different band. Or if you're going to try some really insanely new things, then just try it and see what happens.
Sure.
I guess that's what I mean. If you're breaking new ground, if you're trying new things, then yeah, keep going.
Sure.
But if you're just pumping shit out, I don't know, then no, you should probably work on something new.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. In fact, mostly agree with you. What I would say though is, so this is kind of the way that I view this, because I've been thinking about this, like with like the release of like the new Motley Crue song, and for some reason that just triggered this sort of question in my head. My whole thing is, I believe that if the artists are truly still inspired to keep making new music, or if they're just good enough going on nostalgia tours and playing their old stuff and still making a living at it, my entire view on that pretty much is, well, who am I to judge that? Because at the end of the day, I don't have to like something just because it exists. You know what I mean? So if I like have an issue with, like, personally with like one of my bands putting out what I think is a mediocre album,
I didn't make him for you.
but then there's still, as you said, 100,000 diehard fans that still love it and will still come out and see them play, then, I say go for it. I think it depends on, more than anything, how the artists are actually approaching it. If they're really inspired to make new music, regardless of if it's, as you said, continuing making pretty much the same thing over and over again, or if it's trying new avenues out, like the whole Guns N' Roses Chinese Democracy album, that probably just should have been a whole new band. I mean, let's,
sure, right,
as an example, So,
I do think there's a difference between putting out music and playing live too. Like, absolutely. If your question was, should these guys be going out on the road? Hell yeah. Why not? It's their time. It's their investment.
And it's their band, yeah.
And people will come out to see them, and that's awesome. But I guarantee at every one of those shows, if they say, all right, we're going to play one off our new album, everyone's like, let's go to the bathroom.
There's only so much time in the day to talk about old bands. We should talk about some new bands, specifically new bands that are from kind of where we're from, Kind of? Like local bands.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think today's one of those local roundup days. I feel just like, let's round up some local bands and let's talk about all of them.
You ain't from around here, are you, boy?
Well, here we go.
Let's get started. We got new releases that have come out within the past probably 5 or 6 months. And they're all absolutely fantastic, and they're all artists that you should be checking out.
True. Yeah. So I'll start. The first record we're going to talk about is by it's a project called Matryoshka Ghost, and it's called Cosmic Laugh is the name of the album, and it came out just a little bit ago. This is the first solo project from a songwriter and musician named Angie Barr. I had the pleasure of working with Angie on the project Spectral Snake, and also we've just worked on a lot of music together. But yeah, from the beginning of hearing Angie's songs, I was just blown away. Like, I know that's an overused phrase, but seriously, like, I couldn't even understand how she was writing such amazing songs. I hadn't heard anything like it. And so this is a whole album of that. So of course I loved it. I would say if I had to put this into 5 or 6 words, I would say transcendental, calm, dark, psych folk. I don't know. It's a tough thing to put words around. But yeah, I think at first listen, it might be easy to miss how truly subversive this is and how strange the songs are and the way they move and the way they're constructed. And that's what I like about Angie's songs is, you know, I think as songwriters, we use things like breaks and choruses and pre-choruses to explore some weird different movements in the song. Maybe it's a time signature change, maybe it's a key change, maybe it's something like that. But Angie approaches her entire song that way. So what I mean is, as a songwriter, when you listen to it, you're like, whoa, that wasn't supposed to go there, but it did, and it was amazing and beautiful. But you're always left with this sort of precarious feeling listening to it. That doesn't mean that it's sparse or fragile or anything like that, even though I don't think fragile would be a incorrect observation. But yeah, I think it's easy at first to just say, okay, this song sounds like this and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it really is interesting writing. Angie's voice is really cool. It's really soft, but there's some power there too. When she wants to kind of get under it, she really can lay into it. But the rest of the time, it's mostly delivered soft and a little straight. As a singer that puts vibrato on literally every note I sing, Angie does that some, but for the most part, she delivers it really without much modulation. And I think that works really well for this, especially when those vocals are doubled, tripled, whatever, stacked. And because of that, I think it's easy to be lulled into feeling like these are calm, pretty, straightforward songs, because really, lyrically, there's some really strange stuff going on here. And a lot of exploration of, yeah, really dark and sort of mystical elements at times, I feel. Some sort of esoteric message is coming through in these lyrics. What it is, I'm not sure, but you know it's there. Yeah, great instrumentation. The vocal processing is really cool throughout. I think the production provides like a nice atmosphere for all this to occur in. It does feel like it's its own world that Angie's building here. Brooke Strauss played drums, bass, and did the mix on this, and it sounds great. But yeah, I can't really say more about it. I think it's interesting, and like I said, I think Angie's one of the most original songwriters I've heard in a really long time. And yeah, I feel lucky to have been able to work with her, and I hope to hear more. But yeah, it's dreamy and quirky, a little creepy. For fans of, or things that reminded me of, the Roaches vocally, it sounds a lot like that. That's who her voice reminds me a lot of the time of. Other times, Liz Phair with that sort of tone. The Breeders, musically, in some ways, where they are very comfortable with letting things break down into their most pure elements, and then also are comfortable letting things get chaotic to the point of almost wiping out. It also reminded me a bit of Porno for Pyros, the Good God's Urge album specifically, and a little bit of Donovan with sort of the psychedelic elements too. But yeah, I can't say enough about it. I think it's amazing. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I thought it was utterly amazing. I mean, it's just a very, very cool record. I think the star of it for me, honestly, was Angela's voice. She just has a really gorgeous singing voice. And as you mentioned, Erik, pretty much kept calm throughout the entire record with sort of here and there, she would kind of build up like some suspense in her voice as well. Yeah, the music is really hard for me to explain other than just using words like ethereal and otherworldly. Yeah, Brooks did an amazing job with the production and mixing. It has this dark and lush and dreamy sort of vibe to it, which I think really suits the entire project very well. Guitars, for the most part, have a really delicate sound. They kind of have this reverb, echoey effect to it. Drums are, pretty pulsating, but not overpowering, and mix really well with the sort of lush elements of the production. And I'm pretty sure, if my ears are not deceiving me, that there were some other instruments kind of involved, like instrumentation. I'm not sure what those instruments were, but there were times where the record would kind of drift off into dark sort of, I don't want to use the gothy vibe, but maybe the way you were explaining it kind of, Erik. Yeah, like a dark horror movie kind of vibe to it a little bit. I definitely agree that there definitely was something in the content and lyrical delivery, and it's really not too surprising considering like the spectral snake stuff, and that would be kind of the content that is coming through, like esoteric type stuff, as you mentioned. The best way I could describe it is sort of, yeah, dark, dreamy folk, something along those lines. And I pretty much agree with everything that you said about it, Erik. It's a pretty mind-blowing album, and the songwriting is definitely top tier. The stuff that it reminded me of, I also thought that her voice had a little bit of Liz Phair kind of in it as well. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Kate Bush at times, Amanda Shires, Joanna Newsom a little bit. I would say there was even sort of a little bit of Olivia Tremor Control, like psychedelic type stuff kind of coming through. Yeah, 100%. The thing that I would agree with you for sure, Erik, is the Breeders, because honestly, Kim Deal, especially in the Breeders, kind of has this like haunting quality to her voice a lot of times. And there were times where Angie's voice reminded me a great deal. See what I did there? A great deal of Kim Deal, a little bit. And so, yeah, this was a really, really amazing record. I can't wait to hear more. Excellent, excellent job. To the second review, which comes from Grandfather Confusion. Steve Mall from the Quad Cities, he just dropped a new 5-song EP, simply titled EP. So, as you know, we've had Steve on the show. Grandfather Confusion is the solo project of Steve Mall. This is a short little gem. There's only 5 songs, and I think only 2 of them go over 2 minutes long. This EP also features contributions from Jay Star and Jessica Jelinski, who is the collaborator with Steve on her project called Chachka. And as usual, Steve, in my opinion, just geniusly melds amazing harmonies and melodies with some, deep homages to noise rock. You know, in a lot of ways, and I'm pretty sure I've said this about GC before and just Steve in general, I can't think of very many people who are able to do that and have it come out so successful. It's just like 1 second you hear something from Steve that sounds like it couldn't be out of place on a Today Is the Day record or something along those lines, and then the next minute, I don't know, like a Matthew Sweet record or something. It's very catchy all throughout. The lyrics on this record, I definitely hear some maybe political stuff, but also some, I don't know, maybe odes to like friendship and family kind of going on. There always is a sincerity to his delivery that I always appreciate. The guitars are very fuzzy throughout. The guitar tones, when they get really distorted, are just some of the sickest guitar tones that I've heard. It's really fun to listen to. I think my favorite track is probably the opening track, Mrs. Thanksgiving. The whole thing, as usual with any GC release, is just a blast to listen to. And Steve just has a gift of just really great songwriting. And I also just appreciate too that there's always kind of an element of kind of like a spontaneous nature to some of his work, or at least just sort of like leaving things a little dirty, you know? Like, I don't think that Steve has any interest in cleaning things up in like his recording process or his presentation. And I've always appreciated that about him, because I don't know, it leaves things a little raw. And I've always liked that. So yeah, the stuff that this particular EP reminded me of, I would definitely say Far and Quicksand and Helmet, but also like Ben Lee, Jimmy Eat World, Weezer, and a little bit of like Today Is the Day and Unsane. Yeah, I don't really have much more to say about it. I always appreciate anytime Steve drops a new project. So what did you think about it, Erik?
It's funny with Grandfather Confusion. I first, let me say I love it. But with that being said, I always have a hard time understanding exactly what I'm hearing. And I'll get more into that. But it's just because it seems to be made up of such different elements, like opposing elements. Like, I don't know how to say this. Like the elements of the music seem like they would be incompatible, but instead they just meld into something new and really interesting and really enjoyable to listen to. But yeah, it's really lush and pretty. The production is really dense, and it is super heavy. Like, it really is super heavy, but you don't necessarily get that because melodically it's very major sounding, almost popish. The vocals are very lush and mellow in that extreme heaviness. But yeah, it goes so many places. And Steve's voice is amazing. I love it. And it is the glue for everything you're hearing, but also like just the intent of all of it. It's a hard thing to understand what the intent is, but I do think it's there. And I think it's exactly what you're hearing. I think it's presented honestly. And I think that this isn't trying to be anything. It just is. And sometimes that can be hard to wrap your head around. And that's how it works with me. When I hear Grandfather Confusion, I'm like, this is exactly what it wants to be, but I'm not sure I understand what it wants to be. But that doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Because what comes out is beautiful and just really cool. And I don't know. Yeah, sometimes it's like soft and dark and folky. And a lot of the time, to me, it feels like if Justin Broderick decided to make a pop project, and that sounds crazy, but that's really what I hear. And the funny thing is, when it does get a little softer and a little more in that acoustic realm, to me, that's when it feels the darkest. And then when we're into like the heavy stuff, it's like uplifting and beautiful. So yeah, I think this is an aptly named project for sure. And I don't want any of that to sound like I don't like it, because I love it. I really do. And I just think it feels like it's heavier than it should be, but that's amazing. And I love it. So all I can really do is like compare it to some things and tell people that I think it's really amazing.
Yeah.
So the things that it reminded me of, I also had Helmet in there, and I don't know, I think that's a combination of the vocals and the music, honestly. It's not as like rigid and technical as Helmet sometimes is, but when they're just in like a really heavy moment and the vocals are laying on top of it and it's calm, that's kind of where this lies too. So I would have to say Jesu, of course, I think is very similar in sound. Again, with intent, I don't know. It's difficult to understand that, but just the pure sound of it all. If you like Jesu, I think you'd love this. Enon, Jawbreaker, maybe a little. With the vocals, I don't know. That's a tough one. And then there's a group we reviewed not long ago called Nadja. And this sort of reminds me of that extreme ends of what they're doing. Like, because Nadja was similar in a way. It went from Mazzy Star to like Lingua Ignota. Like it was, and yeah, I love it. I love everything I've heard from Grandfather Confusion. And so I would say check it out, even though I didn't give you anything to hold on to or really nail anything down. I do think you'll like it because it's awesome. All right, so for our third review of the day, we like to talk about like up and coming artists on the show and try to give some exposure to up and comers. So this next one we're going to review is by an artist called William Elliot Whitmore. Of course, I'm joking. William Elliot Whitmore is huge. His new record is called Silently, The Mind Breaks, and it just came out, right? This year? Yeah.
Yes, it did. Yep.
And so honestly, I would assume anyone listening to an Iowa focused music podcast knows who Will Whitmore is and probably has listened to Will Whitmore over the years. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time rehashing. I'm just going to mostly focus on what this is right now. Will is a really cool guy. I had the pleasure of playing shows with him and hanging out a little bit. But yeah, he's a really, really fun dude and just a really nice guy. He plays pretty straightforward, sort of rustic Americana folk, maybe veers into blues a little bit sometimes too. And yeah, mostly on banjo that I've seen him perform. And yeah, it's really like stomping folk, good time, whiskey music. I don't know how else to say it. But yeah, I think this record's really cool. I think Will's voice is really great on this and slightly more authentic sounding. I don't know how that will come off saying that, but it's more like he just has grown into his voice a little bit. It comes through as completely authentic, and his voice sounds great on this record. And the songs themselves seem to be a little more personal in a lot of ways, and sort of more like internal than observational. And it just seems like to me that the songs on here, it seems like Will is working through or navigating through this sort of like modern world with the rest of us. That comes through, and I think you feel that, and you can connect with this. I think that there's expressions of loss throughout, whether that be relationships, whether it be death. Like there's an element of loss being worked through on this, as far as it seems to me. And there is sort of this like end times sort of doomer vibe throughout, which I think is kind of how people are feeling right now. And I think it's a common feeling to just be like, well, we're at the end of the world now, and so we better prepare for it, or we can analyze, that we've had a long, good run as humans and now it's over or whatever. But I think that is an underlying element. And it becomes very overt in the track Bunker Built for Two, which is really a fun, cool song. Yeah, I think anyone that hears it would enjoy its sort of gallows humor and that element of it. But yeah, I thought it was really good. But yeah, I loved it. Things it reminded me of, I don't know. Again, comparing things to Will Whitmore, like what else can I say? He's been compared to people for so long now that it's like, well, but he is just doing his own thing. He has his own sound. But if pressed, I would say something like Steve Earle, Doc Watson, kind of that stripped down Americana kind of thing. And something more like dark Americana folk, like Those Poor Bastards or Slim Cessna or something like that. But yeah, overall, really cool record. I love the cover art. It sounds amazing. And yeah, good stuff. What do you think, Dan?
I thought it was amazing. I am a huge Will Whitmore fan. I was especially a huge fan of the first 3 albums. And I've listened to, I think, pretty much his whole discography up to this point. Of all the artists that we have reviewed that are local artists, I would have to say that Will Whitmore definitely is among the top of someone who doesn't really need too much of an introduction, for sure. He's been around since the late 90s when he started. I remember seeing him at Gabe's when he would jump up on stage and play like 3 songs with his banjo, opening up for 10 grand, things like that, because he was really good friends with those guys. It also could be mentioned too that he is Luke Tweedy's cousin. And I'm sure that Luke recorded this album, and it sounds amazing, just like all of Will's stuff. Yeah, I would say musically it doesn't stray too far away from what Will has always done. I think he always delivers on this stuff. Yeah, dark Americana. I would definitely say I kind of said the same thing that you said, Erik, about the content of the record, although I guess I kind of said it in a different way. To me, it kind of just felt like a lot of what he was singing about was kind of about hope and hopefully surviving through all of the dark times that are kind of upon us, I guess. So yeah, I could kind of see what you were talking about with the sort of like doomer vibe. I definitely did get that from this record for sure. But as far as the music, I mean, there's elements of outlaw country and alternative country, blues, folk. I would say that the way that he plays the banjo definitely screams a lot of bluegrass influence as well. And yeah, I would definitely say that his voice has definitely I think vocally he just keeps getting better and better with every record. Like it is definitely less gravelly than it was when he first began, for sure. But he still definitely has that element there. I do definitely think that over the years, I mean, I would assume somebody who's as experienced of a musician and has pretty much made this his career over the past, at least 25 years now at this point, he would get better and better, and he does. You can hear it in the playing, you can hear it in the delivery, the vocals, the lyrics. I mean, everything is just, this is just a really strong, dark folk country record. And it definitely I don't know, in some ways, I kind of felt uplifted by it as well. Because like I said, there did kind of seem like a sort of a message of like, well, we're in this together. I know that that's kind of a overused sort of sentiment these days, but I did definitely get that from it. So I got kind of like a doomy outlook, but with like positive outlook looking forward type thing. And I really appreciated that. But yeah, just excellent country folk songs. And I mean, if you're into like that kind of music at all, this is your cup of tea because, and I honestly believe that Will Whitmore is one of the best to do it. And not just because he's from around this area. I've always been blown away. Like, I mean, I don't know of very many people who can just get up on stage with just nothing more than a banjo in his voice and move a crowd like he does, or at least make them stop and listen. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, as far as like the stuff that I mean, I also would say, I mean, Will Whitmore's totally doing his thing, so it is kind of difficult to compare him to a lot of things. But I don't know. I think if you're a fan of Tom Waits, you would appreciate him, but also like maybe a little Howlin' Wolf, Robbie Fulks, Sun Volt, Drive By Truckers, Old 97s, Sturgill Simpson. I mean, all of that stuff, just like what Erik said, kind of just Americana, and a lot of that. I hate to kind of use the word alternative Americana, but I guess that's kind of what the genre that we're talking about. And yeah, so it's absolutely amazing. Will Whitmore, Silently the Mind Breaks. I love that album title, and I love the album cover too.
Yeah.
So really, really good stuff.
I'm waiting on the apocalypse. I think it's coming soon. Not nearly soon enough for me. I got a little place where I know we can be safe from the locusts and the zombies and the thieves. Me and you, down here in our bunker built for two. Oh, we'll be safe and sound in our paradise underground, down here in our bunker built for two.
So now we're going on with Good Morning Midnight.
Yeah.
So the name of this record is All the Birds Men. Good Morning Midnight is from Iowa City and features Charlie Cacciatore on vocals and guitar, Griffin Clark on guitar, Cole Hatsey on bass, Aaron Knight on drums, and this album happens to feature Avery Moss on drum machine and synthesizers on the track A Foggy Day in Davenport. So this album, I think, is absolutely fantastic. And it's kind of a little hard for me to nail down exactly what it is, but it's kind of a blend of a lot of different things in one album. It's definitely a rock album at its core, I would say, more than anything else. But I would say that it blends, I guess, sort of like indie rock, classic rock, garage rock, a little bit of proto-punk, new wave, and goth. Man, all these genre labels are just rattling off the tongue these days. And it also kind of has like a little bit of kind of at times like a bar rock or almost like a blue collar feel at times, like sort of like a, I don't know, working man's punk rock or something like that. I'm not sure if that's anything that they were kind of going for, but there definitely were times where it sort of hit me like that, which I think is awesome. I like a lot of that stuff. The vocals I thought were absolutely fantastic on this record. And I remember we reviewed one of their singles. In fact, I think both songs on the single are actually on this album.
Yeah.
Which is United States is Mind Control, which is the first track on this album, which I think is a badass song. And then what was the other one? The Loner. Both are just, I remember thinking back then, these guys are doing doing some pretty good stuff with just pretty direct rock music. But, you know, as you get deeper into like the songs on this record, they're doing some really interesting stuff with rock. I mean, there's the vocalist actually changes a lot of times, I guess, like his tone and range a little bit, because sometimes it comes off kind of gritty and even screaming on a couple of songs. But then other times it's like this quirky, nasally kind of tone a little bit that maybe kind of puts me in mind sometimes of Doug Marsh from Built to Spill a little bit. But I think the vocals are so good and the songs are really well put together. The guitars blend really well. I think that there's a lot of really interesting leads that they do with the guitars here. The lyrics are very cool, drums and bass, and the added part of the synthesizer on a foggy day in Davenport is really cool. And I think like that's a perfect name for the song because that really is visually what it seems to represent. There's a little bit of sort of on that one in particular, there's maybe a little bit of like a dreamy vibe a little bit, but just overall, excellent songs, excellent performance. And yeah, I think there's a lot of sonically, a lot of kind of odes to just a lot of classic rock. There's also a little bit of glam kind of going on here too, a little bit. I would have to throw that in as well. The instrumentation is just top notch. I really, really like this record a lot. And so it's pretty cool that there's somebody, you know, a band like Good Morning Midnight from this area that's doing this. I also don't think that, I think they stand out from pretty much everybody else. There isn't really a lot of stuff that sounds like this to me coming out of this area. Like I said, it's kind of hard for me to really put my finger on how exactly to describe this other than just like a really interesting rock record. But a lot of the stuff this reminded me of, and some of it reminded me more, I guess, of like the approach of the songs than the actual sound itself. But then some of it reminded me of, I think if you're a fan of any of these bands, you would also be a fan of Good Morning Midnight. But like the Replacements, some of it reminded me of the Hold Steady. Some of it reminded me of like Bruce Springsteen, the Pixies, the Stooges, David Bowie, the Gaslight Anthem, Jawbreaker, and even like Nirvana. Parts of it reminded me of Nirvana or Soul Asylum. Yeah, I just think that this is a really good take on rock music. What did you think, Erik?
I like this quite a lot. It's fun to hear those same songs that we talked about on the single in the context of this record. Because my review of that single, I don't want to say it's completely off the mark here, but in the context of this full record, I think I focused on the power pop element of it a lot, like to the point that I compared it to Andrew WK, I think. And so that kind of shows how, you know, just taking a small look at something can give you like an inaccurate impression of what it is. So I think that sort of happened here, but I still do think the foundation of this feels like power pop, but maybe not to a goofy level at all. You know, I think it's presented in a very straight way. Even though it is fun, it's not silly at any points. But with the rest of this record, I think we get elements that I didn't hear before. Some no wave in there, and like Dan said, almost some grunge and noise rock. I don't know. It's more like noise within the confines of power pop. It's like they fit that noise in where they can, and it sounds awesome. Overall, it is very fun, catchy, but I do think there's some darker sort of explorations throughout. It almost goes every other song, I would say. But yeah, it's funny. I get like almost like Cure vibes sometimes. And vibes is a funny word because like it literally is sort of that chorus on the guitar and stuff like that. But yeah, great performances. The guitar switch between like a slightly dirty rock like that power pop sort of sound, and really, yeah, like I said, vibey, chorusy, no wave kind of sounds. But yeah, much like the songs themselves, like they vary between those kind of sounds. The rhythm section is solid, and it supports the entire thing. It feels like everyone in this band is working to serve the song, not really stepping out to be noticed, more just like to keep it as a succinct, sort of tight package. Overall, I think the vocals also serve the song. I think the vocals follow what needs to be done within that song. And so there is quite a variation between songs, and they change quite a lot. I would cite the opening and closing tracks. They have like this slightly more aggressive, actually not just slightly, but more aggressive, gravelly vocal. I remembered exactly what this vocal reminds me of. There's a song called Harmony in My Head by the Buzzcocks. And on the verses, there's this really sort of way more aggressive tone than the Buzzcocks usually have. It also reminds me kind of Pete Townsend in a lot of ways, that particular vocal, especially like the verses of You Better You Bet. But yeah, I think this is really fun for the most part, and it does get a little darker and stranger. Overall, a really cool package of songs, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. But yeah, it's hard to say exactly what this might remind me of, or if you're fans of this, then you would like this. But I would agree with Dan on the Replacements. I hear a little bit of like the Unicorns, or maybe some other like Elephant Sixy kind of things at times. I hear Cheap Trick for the power pop. I hear Sugar in the way that Bob Mould would sing over certain things, and it would get really mellow and vibey, but then change. And then Teenage Fan Club, as far as, you know, some of the vocal delivery and just some how the songs move. Yeah, overall, I think it was awesome. It's not what I expected based on the single that we reviewed, and I like it. I think it's a lot more fleshed out and thorough than what was indicated on the single. So good stuff. Good morning, Midnight. So for our next review, a project called Mad Dad Records. The record is called Myocardial Required Injection, and it just came out. I just found out from Dan that it's J.L. Bollinger, whom I've recorded with a little bit, and he's a really cool guy, and it explains a lot. I didn't realize that as far as like the vocals go. So yeah, overall, I think it's kind of a strange combination of electronic music and mellow sort of indie. I don't want to say folk because it is absolutely not, but it has some elements of that sort of atmospheric, almost ambient folk. I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's sometimes kind of gloomy. Sometimes it's softer than that. Sometimes it's really upbeat, and it gets really pretty and almost uplifting. And sometimes, like I said, it's a little heavy, like the track All Dressed Up for Nothing is like actually pretty intense, pretty dark. But yeah, it kind of goes everywhere. Really great sounds. It comes off as very unconcerned if the production and the sounds and tones are fitting into a specific genre or whatever. I think they're just a mood, and all those sounds describe it. I think for me personally, the star of the show is the voice. It's an amazing voice, almost impossibly low and soft, like it's almost a bass vocal, but I think it technically has to be a baritone, but it's very low and very soft and very direct, soothing in its own way, but still has some bite to it. And it offsets the music perfectly. But yeah, it's really hard to describe this one, but I gotta say, I listened to it last night while I was working on some music equipment, and I just loved it. Like, I just kept pausing to actually think about the moment I was in and listening to it, and just how, I don't know, it almost had a nostalgic feel to me where it was like, oh, I'm really hearing something cool. I'm hearing something interesting. And I haven't felt that way in a while, not in that exact way, where I just had to pause and really take it in and just be like, wow, this is unlike anything I've heard, but yeah, really familiar in a lot of ways too. Overall, I loved it. I think honestly, this one I'm going to be coming back to a lot. I'm going to check out everything else on the Bandcamp page. I really enjoyed it. I didn't have very many recommended if you likes, because honestly, it just fit into the two things I was thinking of so well that I didn't want to really explore other things. Musically, it reminded me a lot of Jenny Haval, whom I love. And then a little bit musically, but mostly vocally, the I'm Your Man record by Leonard Cohen. It had a similar feel to that. But this is the record of the records we reviewed today, the one that I had no idea about and really blew me away. I just loved it. What'd you think, Dan?
Yeah, man. I appreciate just about everything that JL puts out. For those who don't know, he also is an ex-member of Zool, who were one of my favorite bands when they were together in the Iowa City area. Yeah, this is just a really cool project. Like you said, Erik, it is kind of difficult to really describe. It definitely delves into a lot of like what I would call dark dream pop, a little bit of new wave, gothic, and I would say there's elements of it for sure that are even a little bit hyper pop, maybe even vaporwave influenced. A lot of really cool synthesizer sounds. Definitely a big electronic element for sure. But yeah, there are times where it gets really melancholy and really dark, and then other times where it's just really vibrant and there's a lot of energy to it. And I do definitely think that the star of the show here is JL's voice. It lends itself perfectly to what's going on musically, and just the combination of the music that he creates in his vocals creates a lot of really great atmosphere and kind of an ambience as well. And it's really, really, I don't know, almost soothing to listen to in a weird sort of way as well. I really, really loved it. I think I listened to it probably 5 times at least since JL recommended it to me, which, I mean, I think he sent it to me a couple of weeks ago. And I mean, anymore, if I listen to something in 2 weeks more than twice, you know, then it definitely made an impression on me, you know? And yeah, and I love the title of it too, the myocardial required injection. Yeah, there really isn't a lot of, I know I've pretty much been saying this about every release that we've reviewed today, I think, but there really is nothing else out there like this. Yeah, I also was kind of a little at a loss as far as what to sort of compare it to. It does have definitely some cinematic elements also, like musically, I feel. But I would say like, Leonard Cohen for sure. I don't think it would be too much of a stretch to say that JL's voice has that sort of deep baritone sort of style. So then like also like Acid Bath a little bit, or Dax Riggs, vocally more than musically for sure. I don't know. I really did struggle on what to compare this to exactly, which is, I think at the end of the day, that's awesome if you can make something where somebody tries to come up with a comparison and it's a struggle, because it's got to mean then, right, that you're setting yourself apart, And I'm not sure if this is a project that is pretty much just intended to be like a bedroom project where he's just gonna release the music and that's gonna be that, or I don't know if he has any intent on presenting a live performance with it or not. But either way, it is really, really something. It's really, really good. So
Nice.
those are our 5 picks for the local roundup. I don't know who's counting any. Is this like 7 or 8 or something?
I don't know. I'm not being coy. I honestly have no idea.
Yeah, I really don't either. I'd have to go back and look what the number was of the last one we did, which I don't even remember the last time we did a local roundup.
Well, we did a few for a while, and we laid off for a little while, and
Yep.
yeah.
That's the story of the podcast these days. Lay off for
That's
a little
true.
while.
Yeah.
Which
Hit it
is
hard and then lay off,
Yeah.
Take some time.
Something terrible happened. Let's No, that's life sometimes, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you get up there, you get older, and then next thing you know, it's like, do I want to do a podcast? Well, yes, I do want to do a podcast, but I can't. Not right now.
Yeah. I just can't.
It's
Not
just
too hard. It's too hard to talk to my friend
It's too difficult.
and goof off.
Talk about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff.
Wow.
If anybody out there listening wants us to review an album or talk to a band or anything like that, get a hold of us.
Yeah.
Accelerativ.thrust@gmail.com.
Yeah.
You can also just message us on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can be like you're in the band or your friends are in the band or you want to hear an interview.
Let us know about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let us know. And we'll either take you up on it or ignore you.
One of the two.
Actually, we probably won't ignore you. But
we won't ignore you. And
no,
actually, to be honest,
we would love to hear from you.
to be honest with you, I think every single person that has messaged us with recommendations, I'm pretty sure we responded. Became best friends.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for reaching out. What are you doing later? That's how we respond. You wanna hang out? You wanna watch a scary movie or
the best response?
Have some pizza?
But thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Oh man.